Ms. Faber, sales in Europe and Asia have decreased up to 9%. Those regions used to grow quite a bit in the past years. When will we see a turning point in this decline?
Yeah, great question. And I think the question is correct, because the question's not if we'll see a turning point in the decline, it's when. And I think both, well, really around the world, but certainly also in Europe and in APAC, we're set up well for future growth. The portfolio is exposed to really good spaces, hybrid work, gaming, video conferencing. All of those are macro trends that will be good growth spaces. And as you've seen, we can execute really well in those spaces, whatever the market is doing. And you saw that in this past quarter. The execution was really strong, with some good share gains, including especially in Europe as well. So the recovery will be gradual going forward, depending on what the market does. Lots of uncertainties in the market because of global GDP growth, inflation, some of the return to office, corporate IT budgets not being quite back yet where they used to be. But depending on how those macros develop, we will return back to growth, including in APAC and Europe.
You've mentioned gaming. That's one of the product categories that have experienced some shrinking, as well as video collaboration. What will your solutions look like in order to re-strengthen those two categories?
Yeah, innovation's always the answer in gaming, and it's something that Logitech is really, really strong at. So one of the subcategories in gaming that we were excited about in the past quarter was simulation. So especially our driving wheels, those have performed really well. If we look at some other parts of the gaming business, I also like the premium end. The Pro Light mice are doing very, very well. And then in console headsets, we haven't been performing quite as well, but we've just come out with a really cool new one, the A50X, where with a single tap of the button on the headset, you can switch from PC to PlayStation to Xbox. That's off to a really great start. So I think the future in gaming is bright, and it's driven by fantastic innovation.
Now, if we look to 2025, if we look ahead to next year, you mentioned a number of headwinds and uncertainties in regards to net sales. What exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, just a number of things. So we're a very global company with a footprint in more than 100 countries. And what we see is global GDP growth is a bit uneven. Some places looking pretty strong, others not so strong. So that, as well as inflation, impacts consumer confidence and just a consumer wallet. What can they spend on our categories? So that's one that's very high over in macro. A second one that's important for us is what happens in companies. So we're seeing that IT budgets that companies have to spend on just the kind of stuff we sell haven't snapped back yet to the levels of pre-COVID. And even when they're recovering, cybersecurity is often the priority within those budgets for spending. So for a B2B business to really get back to the growth levels we expect for the longer term, that would need to get a little better. And then finally, return to the office. As I said, in the US, office vacancy rates just hit a record high. 20% of offices are empty in the US. And again, for someone who sells B2B products for offices, that would need to improve for us to get back to higher growth rates.
Now, you have been reducing your costs. Are you going to continue doing so? Are you planning any restructuring to keep costs low? And if so, would that have any impact on the number of jobs or employees?
So I'm really proud of what the team did in terms of cost reductions in Q3. That's just great operational discipline. And that was mostly on the side of material and supply chain costs, which is fantastic. The other area of good cost control has been in promotions, where the team really fielded much smarter promotions over the holiday season. And again, that you see in that gross margin line, and we improved our gross margins by quite a lot in the quarter. When it comes to overheads and people expenses, Logitech runs a pretty tight ship. We're always at about 25% OpEx, and we expect that to continue.